Okay, everybody, I'm here with Ryan from Cinecrisis, or are you Cinecrisis? What do you prefer?
Ryan is fine.
Okay, now let me ask about the name. Is there a crisis?
Well, the name comes from a combination of the two things that really mean a lot to me, which is movies, so that's the cinema, and the crisis is from like DC Comics, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Infinite Crisis.
Oh,
So that's actually how I came up with that. I'm kind of stuck with it now, but
okay. I didn't know if you were trying to say like cinema is in crisis or whatever.
I
But
mean, you can look at it that way too. But that's
yeah.
where I really came up with that. It was like I wanted to do something with both things, which I love, but it ended up being more film focused.
So I was introduced to you because you put a really nice comment on one of my videos that I put out, and I looked into your channel and I was like, wow, this guy has like really prolific content on his channel, really concise, straightforward, reviews that I thought summed up accurately your opinion and like the summation of the movie, etc. I think Roger Ebert said once that the key to a good review is to give not just give your opinion, but give the reader an experience of what the movie is like, right? So that even if like you say it's terrible and horrible, the person reading it could say to themselves, "Well, you know what? I think I would like this movie."
I
Right? Which I
agree.
which I thought would be which I thought was a good way to put it, and I think you do a really good job.
Oh, thank you. I
And
appreciate that.
and so I reached out to you and I was like, "Hey, we're sort of sitting in the same bucket subscriber wise. Let's do a little crossover and maybe we can pool our resources here." And I think that's how people grow on YouTube. So I asked you for a recommendation of something to watch, and you were like, "Hey, how about a double feature of the Night Stalker and the Night Strangler?" And they're television movies.
And one of these.
Are you suggesting that we pound one of these into Skorzeny's chest?
No, into his heart.
Darren McGavin, The Night Stalker.
And they're from the Dan Curtis studio. And Dan Curtis was someone that I had no idea who he was. So it was a total blind spot. And I like to think that I know a little bit about horror movies. But it was a great recommendation. I really liked these movies. And
Excellent.
if you could explain, talk a little bit about who Dan Curtis is. Are you familiar with more of his work?
Yes, very much so. And for quite a while now, um, I had not seen these movies until maybe about a year ago when I got the Kino Blu-ray release.
Yeah.
Um, but they had been on my radar for quite a while. And the reason is because I've been a fan of Dan Curtis and his production studio for probably since I was in maybe junior high or so. That's when I first saw the TV show Dark Shadows, which was arguably his biggest work. Dark Shadows was a daytime TV soap opera that was done in the late 1960s. And it started off as kind of just this generic gothic soap opera about a wealthy family that lives in Maine. And, they do the kind of local shenanigans and intrigue and stuff like that. And when ratings were declining, they decided to add supernatural aspect to it and started with like a ghost. And then they did actually a story with an immortal phoenix. But then the show was saved when they added the character of Barnabas Collins, who was a vampire who came back, who was in like hibernation and was resurrected or released and took over the show. And they did basically their own version of Dracula. It was like the same story as Dracula, but with this character, Barnabas Collins. And it took the show into like the pop culture zeitgeist and made it like a huge phenomenon. It's largely forgotten by most people nowadays, but there's definitely a cult following for this.
There was a
And
Tim Burton movie, right?
oh yes, don't. The less said
Not very
about that, the
bad.
better. That movie. Apparently, Tim Burton was supposed to be a huge fan, as was Johnny Depp, who played Barnabas in the movie. But that movie was just a mockery. It was like a satire of the show, which was very disappointing. So
Sure. I have not seen either. Would it be worth checking out?
So I would. I mean, it's hard because there's like hundreds and hundreds of episodes because it's a daytime soap, and I don't know why I had so much time when I was in junior high and high school that I was watching like all these episodes or whatever. But
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't think it's really practical now. I would say though, definitely checking out the two feature film adaptations that were made after the show ended, which feature all of the original cast. The
Okay.
first one is excellent. It's called House of Dark Shadows, and it basically does a quick like 90-minute condensed version of the Barnabas storyline from start to finish. So
Okay.
there's that one, and then Night of Dark Shadows is like a weird, loosely connected film that it's interesting, but not very good either. So I would definitely say House of Dark Shadows is worth. It's one of the underrated '70s kind of vampire movies. So
Would you say that this Dan Curtis, he's kind of like a television Val Lewton or Carl Laemmle or something?
I would say so. He definitely cut his teeth in the horror genre. I mean, so you had Dark Shadows, Night Stalker, and Night Strangler. He also did the movie Trilogy of Terror, which I don't know if you're familiar with that one either. It was also a television anthology film.
Yeah, I looked that up with Karen Black, who I really like,
Karen
from
Black,
Family
yes.
Plot,
Yes.
yeah, which is a great movie. I like it. But and then also Burnt Offerings, which I have not seen either, with Oliver Reed, who usually is in pretty. If he's in a horror movie, it's usually pretty good, like The
Yeah.
Devils.
Yeah, and he also did many other like adaptations of like a classic, more gothic horror novels. So he did his own version of Dracula with Jack Palance. He did a Dr.
Oh, yeah.
Hyde. I think there's a Turn of the Screw. So yeah, I haven't seen those in quite a while. I do have the DVD from that, but I think they're all on Blu-ray now. So I need to check those out again.
Well, I promise we'll get to Kolchak here, but speaking of Turn of the Screw, have you ever seen that Marlon Brando movie, The Nightcomers?
I have not.
It's not. It's interesting. It's a prequel to Turn of the Screw, and
Really?
it's a pretty interesting. Yeah, it's a pretty wild movie. I would recommend that you check it out. It's kind of cool. But okay, let's get into the Night Stalker. Let me ask you first off, which of these movies is your favorite?
Night Stalker, by far.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I guess we have something to debate about.
No.
So,
Okay.
what you want to give us a summation of the plot of Night Stalker? What it's about?
Sure. So Night Stalker is about a reporter named Carl Kolchak who is investigating a series of murders in Las Vegas that all have a very similar and bizarre connection. Young women are being murdered and drained of their blood. And he is on the case, and the local authorities are trying to suppress the story. And he finds some very startling clues and connections that may lead to a otherworldly suspect.
So the reason I like this movie so much is because of Darren McGavin's performance, and audiences would know him best as the dad in Christmas Story.
Oh, of course, yes.
Here he is like the classic cigarette chain smoking, like intrepid reporter. You know, this is back when being a reporter wasn't like an aspirational job that you had to go to Harvard to get. Right? This was like you were like basically a bum, and like the only person that would want to be a reporter to have to hound the police and like dig through like hang out with like degenerates and get information would be a guy who was like a working class guy. So he's like a working class reporter. He's not Georgetown educated, right? Which is something that I like. And he is very funny. He's very likable. He's very charming in this role.
What do you want, Vincenzo? A testimonial from Count Dracula?
Out! Get out! What is this out, get out game we play? This nut thinks he is a vampire. He has killed 4, maybe 5 women. He has drained every drop of blood from every one of them. Now that is news, Vincenzo. News! And we are a news paper. We are supposed to print news, not suppress it.
You know darn well why we're soft peddling this thing.
No! Tell me why. Could it be because we have been told to?
And in the movie, it's about his fight to convince his editor, Vincenzo, as well as like the board of like the town elders, like the sheriff, etc. And Ralph Meeker, who, boy, I didn't recognize him, man. I love Kiss Me Deadly. That's one of my favorite like old noir detective movies. You ever seen that?
I have not seen that one.
Yeah, it's adaptation of a Mickey Spillane book, and he plays Mike Hammer in it. And if you don't take any of my recommendations, watch that movie. Watch Kiss Me Deadly. It's on Criterion. It's fantastic.
I'm definitely gonna check out all these. I mean,
the thing that was frustrating to me about Night Stalker was that it's obviously that no one pays attention to him. People are obviously being the victim of vampires, these cocktail waitresses in Las Vegas, right?
yes.
And I'll just give you my complaint. And here's the thing. I would have had glowing things to say about this movie until I saw Night Strangler, which I like more.
Oh,
Because I thought, yeah, and this Dan Curtis actually directed Night Strangler,
he did.
where he was just the producer on the first film.
Correct.
I thought that in comparison to Night Strangler, Night Stalker is relative. You could tell it's a cheaper movie. Would you say?
In what way? In what way? You mean production?
I mean, yeah, it's cheaper. It was made, and they do it. It's very economical, and they use everything that they possibly can to make it happen. right?
I see what you mean, because I mean, Night Strangler has the advantage of like much more elaborate sets, especially when they go into the Seattle Underground and the mad scientist laboratory and all that. Yes, I'll definitely get, and that's definitely my I guess more praise for that movie in terms of that. But I think, and not to cut you off, but I think in story wise and story construction, Night Stalker is the better film. I can go into that later, but
Okay, yeah, all right. I'll let you. No, I'll let you get into that. But explain that. Why do you say so?
I think it's I don't know if it's the nature of the villain. It's much more, I don't know, easier to follow, or more in tune with what we expect. I like the vampire instead of the kind of zombie scientist guy.
I would say that I thought I was a little underwhelmed by the vampire in Night Stalker.
Okay.
And obviously it's not just because it's old or whatever, right? But I thought it was a little generic. He was a little he was definitely not like an Anne Rice vampire who was cool and collected and like very
He's not suave. He doesn't
he's
say
not
anything,
suave.
Yeah.
He just like he's very much like he's like a Salem's Lot vampire, but without like the cool Nosferatu makeup and vibe. He's just kind of like a dude walking around.
But you know why I also do like it's a Janos Skorzny is the name of the vampire, which is a great name. But he is very much in look and appearance to very much similar to Barnabas Collins from Dark Shadows. So that's why it kind of probably spoke to me a little bit more too.
That's why you like
it. He is kind of suave and slick, but unlike Skorzny, but it definitely has the same kind of vibes to him.
I'll tell you, the other thing I like more about Night Strangler is that I feel like there's much more going on. There are more subplots, there are more characters. I think it's more dynamically shot.
I felt the opposite about the way it was shot. I felt like there were more interesting things done with the camera in Stalker.
In Stalker, okay, that's fair enough. And maybe I was just razzle-dazzled by, how many different locations they went to and the different setups, because that opening scene of Night Stalker, he's going through investigating people and he's like, then I talked to this guy, then this guy, then this guy. And they're all very, interesting, dynamic little pieces.
Tuesday, April 4th. First stop police headquarters to introduce myself and see if any later information had come in about the Ethel Parker killing. There was nothing new. No useful leads given by the victim's friends, acquaintances, or family. Standard medical examiner's report. So far, the murder was a one-way street to nowhere.
I'd like to take
make an appointment with my secretary. You're going to have to make one.
Captain, I'd like to make a little question. Hey, Captain, wait a minute. What's the matter? I want to talk to the captain.
Second stop, Omar's tent. No leads. Ethel Parker never mixed with customers, had no known enemies, kept her problems to herself. Unmarried, all her relatives in Massachusetts, she'd left the mainstream of life without making a ripple.
Whereas in Night Stalker, it's like, cut to him back in his car again. And you can tell that they filmed one night of him in his car and then just keep driving around, Darren. We just got to get, an hour of car footage. And then he continues to go back to like that little board conference room.
Yes.
And kind of have the same scene over and over again with like the sheriffs and stuff.
The sheriff and the DA are constantly telling him, Kolchak, shut up.
I tell you one more time, Kolchak, you watch your ass or whatever, right? And not to say, I'm not trying to rag on Night Stalker. If that's the only movie we'd watched, I would have said a lot of great things about it. And I would have talked primarily about Carl Kolchak, the character.
Do you think, though, that the tone also of Night Strangler is a little bit more tongue-in-cheek or more kind of silly than Night Stalker, which takes itself like deathly serious, which is something that I did appreciate a little bit more.
That is so true. Like when
Stalker.
he's walking to the newspaper office and the copy lady is like, I got it, and hits him in the stomach. There are a lot more pratfalls. There are a lot more like goofiness. And I think there's more energy in the relationships between. So when he's having his arguments with Vincenzo, the editor, it is funnier and more enjoyable to watch. And they feel like there's more of a character connection there than just like constantly berating him and telling him not to do it and don't follow you the lead or whatever.
Well, in terms of character, I think Vincenzo is much more sympathetic and on Kolchak's side in The Night Strangler.
That's what I also liked about it.
Is definitely, and I think that's because of John Carradine's character and presence. Like, you kind of can put them all on a spectrum as to like who's on the more like altruistic side of journalism and who's become like totally corporate and doesn't care anymore. And Vincenzo's caught like in the middle of that, and he's seeing both sides of it, and he's definitely siding more with Kolchak, and he's trying to do the right thing. And I think they do get their ducks more in a row in terms of what they can prove and what they can show is like for real. They don't have to like use circumstantial evidence. They have the 21-year pattern. They have all the evidence, and still the newspaper suppresses it. And it's even worse in The Strangler, where the newspaper itself suppresses the story, not the authorities.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing too about Strangler, is that there is more of I'd say a mystery, where there are more clues to uncover. Oh, look, we found these newspaper clippings. I'm going to go follow this lead. How is the murderer getting out to murder and then disappearing so quickly? Oh, he has this secret base that we find.
Yes, there's none of that in Stalker. It's very much, it's almost like police investigation work that he's doing as a reporter. He's not doing any kind of back digging or back.
He's just always.
The
he's just
FBI
popping
just
up with the
provides
cops.
all the information to them. Jinx.
Yeah. But no, I think back to what your point is about. There's like, I think about that shot in Night Stalker where we have the policeman's feet and the dead body, I believe, in that shot, and then it moves up to when the cops pull in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, I think it's a continuous shot, and then Kolchak's car pulls up and they go, "Oh, you're late," right?
Yeah.
That is very economical filmmaking on a low budget. Yeah.
Do you think they spend all their money maybe doing the action scenes instead, which I think are much better in Stalker than Strangler has like a few, maybe one good action scene, but in Stalker there's like 3 legit, very well done for 1970s TV action scenes. And I'm talking about the fights, like the fights where he comes out of the hospital, the vampire comes out of the hospital.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, in the first one, it is more visceral, because you have a more visceral villain, whereas in Night Strangler, the villain is kind of more elusive, and it's a lot of like running around alleyways trying to find him, and he's disappeared.
Yes,
but like that scene,
fedora and overcoat,
But with the vampire fights in the first one, like at the pool, wasn't. I mean, I don't think that you would impress a modern person with that and say, "Hey, check this fight scene out," right? But you and me watching it, we're like, "Damn, they got some stunt doubles in here, like just some stunt guys in here, just kicking ass." These guys are falling all over the place. That
Well, especially the pool scene is great, and especially they actually do show it underwater too. But when I saw when he exits the hospital and all the police cars come out and the motorcycles are crashing and doing all that stuff, they're shooting at him. I mean, he's throwing people over cars. When I saw that for the first time, I was genuinely shocked. I had no idea that they staged something this elaborate for a movie this old for a TV budget. I mean, that was impressive.
Something I was going to say too about that is, can you think of any earlier example of a vampire character in media having super strength? Because it's a common trope now, but would that have been new and interesting at the time?
Trying to think. Certainly not in any of. I mean, probably in some of the Hammer Dracula films, he has a little bit, but they certainly never did any kind of fight choreography or anything like that. Definitely not in the Universal films. So yeah, I would say could not think of any previous media example where that was a thing. Yeah.
That probably would have been an interesting idea at the time, which has just been ripped off so much that people take it as like, that's just canon of vampire lore.
Right.
Whereas back, I mean, this is Richard Matheson, which I was surprised to see that he wrote this, which is interesting. Obviously famous for I Am Legend, with a sort of variation on the vampire, right?
Yeah. And the original film adaptation, which is Last Man on Earth, right, for I Am Legend, that is a very they're almost not even vampires in that one. They're kind of like zombies, if I recall correctly.
Aren't they zombies in like Omega Man too?
I can't remember, but yeah, it's always kind of like these different film adaptations are different. But
well, you saw I Am Legend, right?
Yes, with Will Smith.
Which is not bad until the zombies actually show up and they look terrible.
I honestly don't even remember. I remember just not liking it when I saw it.
The thing that ruins that movie is that they don't do the twist ending, right? Which is in the Charlton Heston one, where the vampires were afraid of him the whole time. That's the whole reason to do the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, But yeah, no, Night Stalker, I think it's really neat. I think that the character of Carl Kolchak, obviously, he went on to get a sequel because this was one of the most popular TV movies ever at the time.
It was extremely successful. It had a huge rating share. I think it won the ratings time slot for that night, and they definitely wanted to do another one. Yeah, and then of course that was also wildly successful and led to the Kolchak TV series.
Have you seen it?
I have not seen the TV series. It's on my list. I was actually almost bought the Blu-ray,
Okay.
but I haven't gotten it yet. So
I was interested looking at the Kolchak, looked at the episode list, right? And I saw that one episode's about like werewolves and one is a UFO episode. And I'm like, Kolchak was like X-Files before X-Files.
yes, and apparently the creators of the X-Files were very much fans of Kolchak. And there is a revival show that was done, I want to say
really?
early 2000s or something like that, that lasted like very, very few episodes by some of the people involved with X-Files.
We talked a little bit like at the beginning of this just about DC Comics. I'm not a big DC guy, but can I ask you this? Is the character of Constantine kind of a Kolchak ripoff? Isn't he like a paranormal investigator guy?
He sort of is, but he dabbles much more into the occult, and it's much more magic and kind of sorcery, stuff like that.
There seems like there's always kind of like a scientific explanation for a Kolchak thing. Maybe not.
Yeah, I mean these are much more traditional
Right.
monsters that we associate with the horror genre. They don't really dabble into like black magic or the occult.
Kolchak.
Or like your kind of standard. I think they did the Jack the Ripper in from what I read from one of the TV episodes, and
So it's like Kolchak meets,
monster.
meets so and so. Kolchak meets the swamp monster. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe kind of with like Constantine with Swamp Thing. That's could have been the same thing, right?
Yeah, I thought Darren McGavin was super cool in this show.
Oh, absolutely.
He's like a lovable kind of slob guy. In the second movie, I think they give him a little bit of a hairpiece, so he has a little more of his hair is a little more going on, right? I don't know if you noticed that or not.
I did not notice that. Yeah,
and maybe he grew it out a little bit, but I always thought he was great in Christmas Story. I don't know if I've seen him in anything else.
He is in one of the airport movies. I cannot remember which one though. He is a passenger on one of the flights. It's either 75 or 77. And I saw your airport survey
most
of the
popular
airport
video.
film. Yes, and I can't remember which one he's in, but I did recognize him in there. Before the TV show was made, there actually were plans for a third Kolchak movie.
Okay.
Have you read about this at all?
A tiny bit. I think I saw that they was trying to do it and it didn't work out.
And the plot for this sounds just absolutely bananas, and it would have been amazing. It was apparently supposed to be called The Night Killers, and Richard Matheson wrote the script for the film. It was completed, and it was going to be set in Hawaii, and there were going to be aliens and android duplicates of politicians who were infiltrating local government.
Sounds like They Live.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, which is another fantastic movie. Oh my God, yes.
Wow, that sounds really good.
People don't know about They Live. Have you found this? Like, no one knows. Like, regular people don't know about this movie. And then when you say you reference, I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. They're like, oh, that's from that movie? I've never even heard of that movie, but they know the line.
They know the Shepherd Fairy t-shirt too, right? I mean, they know Obey, I imagine. Or maybe not.
Probably.
Maybe not. Maybe.
Yeah, it's sad that like people don't know about They Live.
Well, that's the first movie my fiance and I saw together when we started dating was They Live.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was a screening of it.
That worked out okay.
College theater, and I was like, "You ever seen this?" No. And we went, and she liked it, so yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, definitely.
But
that's awesome.
That was the first movie we ever saw together. But yeah, I love They Live. But no, that sounds like an awesome third movie. I wish they would have made it. I think I'll probably check out the show because I like.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I like the premise of the show of the movie. I think Kolchak is a great character because he's not the kind of character you would expect to be interacting with supernatural villains.
Yeah.
Which I think is fun.
He's like this curmudgeon kind of character, like, and doesn't he feel kind of out of place and out of time?
Yeah, and he's always wearing like a little, what do you call that kind of hat? That Buster Keaton
like
hat?
Straw hat.
Yeah.
Straw hat and the seersucker suit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and but he's such a curmudgeon. but
Yeah.
it's fun to see him interact and like walk into these like scary places. Like at the end of the first one, I thought that the vampire's house was pretty. It was filmed very. It was nice. It was claustrophobic. There was some nice cinematography that they were doing with the lighting, especially when he's trying to free that woman from the bed. Which I mean,
Yes.
you know, if you're watching this,
That's a suspenseful scene.
it's
I have to say.
suspenseful
Where he's in
scene,
the closet. Yeah.
and it's also like pretty lurid subject matter for like a 70s television show, I would imagine. I mean, this is, but I think the character of Kolchak helps like liven it up a little bit and make it less frightening.
Yes, he's definitely there to kind of provide like a energetic, kind of irreverent perspective, and he's the perpetual he's the dog with a bone, right? He won't
Yes.
let it go.
He's
And people are constantly yanking on his leash. You gotta control yourself. You gotta get back here. And he's the smartest one in the room. I mean, right? He's the only one that's putting the pieces together, solving the puzzle, asking questions that are relevant and provocative. And you notice like the experts, like when he's talking when they're having the press conference, the doctor answers his questions and takes him seriously because he's leading down the correct conclusion, the right path. And it's just the authorities are just trying to keep a lid on it. And it's your standard thing where they want to control the situation. They want to keep a wrap on it because it's bad for business. It's bad for publicity, bad for tourism.
Yep.
They don't care if people get hurt along the way.
That is the interesting, that I think is like probably the thematic core of the whole show, right? Of the whole series is, and I wonder if the television show carries that on of like I mean, there's a character like in the Incredible Hulk television show, the Jack McGee reporter, right? Who's always trying to prove that Hulk is real, you know, and, there's sort of that, I like that Michigan J Frog, like getting the rug pulled out from him all the time where it's like, oh, now they're going to recognize that I'm a hero and that I saved the day. And then every time the bureaucracy slaps him down and says, not only are you not going to be thanked for your work in defeating the villain, but we're going to run you out of town on a rail because you are symbolic of something that we'd rather forget.
Where is my story?
You want your story?
Yeah.
All right. I'll give you your story. All 20 copies.
What do you mean 20 copies?
That's all that came off the press before Crossbinder stopped them. What are you looking so surprised about? I'm the dummy. I actually thought they'd print all that.
Well, why didn't you print it? I mean, you're the managing editor. Why didn't you print
Oh,
it?
what's wrong with you? You actually think there's any difference between this town and Vegas?
But they saw it, Tony. They all saw it.
Right.
Yes.
So go.
You are an undesirable element.
The fact that you've even brought up this thing, you know, like you need to just go away. We would rather not think about it, and you're part of that, so be gone. Right.
Well, he exposes their inadequacy as leaders. I mean, he pokes holes in everything that they're doing. They're doing it completely the wrong way, and he's the one who exposes that, and they don't want to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
And that's at it. And what's even worse is that, I mean, for the corruption and suppression of the news and all that, I mean, the authorities are the ones who write the news copy at the end.
Right.
And that's quite disturbing. And the movie definitely plays it up and does it quite well. But I mean, he writes a story and it disappears, and the local authorities have written a story and put his name on it, and that is the official byline now.
That's a great point. And do you think you would see that in the 60s and 70s, there seemed to be a lot more openness for people to accept the idea that conspiracy theories existed. Right. And
I think so.
And like now, like Unsolved Mysteries television show with Leonard Nimoy, obviously Watergate was a conspiracy of a kind.
But do you think now that the media and the newspaper, they would be all on board with complying with the government telling them, hey, suppress this story, write it this way, do it that way. This is how it happened. Just don't worry about it. And now maybe it wouldn't be as big a deal.
I think that's absolutely correct. And I kind of brought this up earlier when I talked about that Kolchak is a different kind of reporter, right? He's like a gumshoe reporter. He's like James Cagney in Picture Snatcher. He's kind of like a ne'er-do-well bottom feeder guy, right? And that there's sort of like a class thing going on here in that now when you have reporters and politicians coming out of the same colleges, they run in the same social milieu, right? Whereas before, as a reporter, you wouldn't be college educated, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't come from a wealthy family, and so you would be naturally adversarial against like elites, right? And now that's
Yeah.
no longer the case. I don't want to get too political,
The
but they do
opposite.
kind of work hand in glove now, right?
Yes.
And yeah, I think you're right. I think there, to be a good reporter is to be a good lapdog for, and to. It's no longer about exposing the truth. It's about manufacturing a narrative for what they believe is the greater good, right?
I agree. I agree, and it's prominent on display here, and it's a very old-fashioned way of thinking about journalism. Because, I mean, in our lifetimes, probably this has not been the case, and for the majority of the history of the occupation, the career that's you were at odds with local authorities, national authorities, and you were constantly trying to expose and show them for what they really are. And now it's a very different reality.
It seems like a lot of journalist jobs nowadays is like getting rid of other journalists,
And that's also part of it. Yeah.
right? Like, oh no, shut him up. He's not. Yeah, but anyway, no,
Yeah,
that's
so I really appreciated the thematic element there. And then one of the other things that was interesting, I don't know if you picked up on this, the settings and locations for these films is very unique. They're
yeah,
very unique. And they're not the usual places that you would set movies. I mean, Las Vegas and Seattle, those are not your typical venues. Usually you're New York, Chicago, Los
yeah.
Angeles, whatever. And I think those that provided a little bit of an interesting dynamic. I mean, and talk about like, oh, they're trying to preserve the the image of the city or whatever. And you're talking about Las Vegas, which is like, an inherently seedy, inherently
Yeah.
seedy place, and they're worried about the image and stuff like that. And you're an undesirable element in Las Vegas. Like,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, that's right.
know.
And that probably was a great pitch. I mean, obviously we've seen it since in Fright Night, the vampire in Las Vegas, but like that idea of like, hey, we're making a vampire movie and it's not going to be set in Transylvania. It's not a Hammer horror. It's
Yeah.
in Las Vegas where you wouldn't expect it. And any opportunity I get to see 60s iconography of Las Vegas, I'm there. They're on that old Vegas strip, which I don't know if you've been to Vegas before.
Yes, I have. I have.
But if you go to the old Vegas now, it's
Old Strip. Those are what you see, the Golden Nugget and those other hotels. Yeah.
they've got it covered with like a big roof now, and it's basically just all penny slots for people, rolling around in wheelchairs. It's not as happening as it was in like Diamonds Are Forever, right?
Yeah.
But that was cool to see, and that was another part of that Seattle. I was like, that when he goes to the Seattle Tower and sits there for dinner or whatever, like that's so cool. What a beautiful place.
And I had never heard of the Seattle Underground. Actually, the only other time I think I had heard about that was there's an episode of Scooby Doo where they go to Underground Seattle. That's probably the only other time I've seen that in media.
Is that a real thing?
Apparently, yeah, I looked it up. Yeah, because I actually my brother was going to Seattle for a work event, and I was like, oh, why don't you go to the Seattle Underground? And he's like, that's not a thing. What are you talking about? And I looked it up. Apparently, it is real.
Really? If you told me that, I'd be like, well, let's go see Nirvana or something, like what underground, like. But no, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the Kolchak is cool. I want to check out the show. I wish they would have made a big third, because I have a feeling that like obviously Dan Curtis wasn't involved in the show.
He was not. Apparently, Universal bought the rights to the property after the second film or something like that, and they did it all independently
And they kind of cut him out.
without the original people.
Okay, and they kind of cut him out of the game. That's too bad.
Apparently, and apparently also there was some bad blood between Darren McGavin and Dan Curtis at the end of production for The Night Stalker. That they were getting into a lot of arguments and fights, and they were not on good terms.
Really? Well, the movie doesn't show it because I think it's really spontaneous and fun.
Yeah. No, but I think just in terms of like the way the production schedule was working and his Dan Curtis' behavior on set, apparently according to certain reports and stuff, they were getting into a lot of heated arguments. So they were not on good terms afterwards.
Do you know what Dan Curtis was like, or what kind of guy he was?
It's hard to tell from a lot of these interviews. I mean, you see just one side of people, but then you read other things, and the audio commentary for these films is also very enlightening and informative. It's where I get a lot of this information. So
Okay. I bought the Blu-rays. So
okay, nice.
And I think that's great that you're a big physical media guy, because so am I.
You have to be anymore. I firmly firmly believe and advocate for
You
it
have
at
to
this
be.
point,
Yeah.
because one day they're going to find something offensive in certain movies and they're going to be gone.
Yeah.
They're going to be wiped away. Censorship is a real thing. It's coming back in a big way, and you know, you never know what's going to be gone. And if you buy something digitally, that doesn't mean anything.
Do you have an affinity for old television?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's how actually how I got into a lot of that's how probably how I got into old movies was more through old television.
Okay.
Um, I mean, Nick at Night was a huge part of my childhood. And they played, that was when they showed mostly, the 50s shows had more or less gone out, but they were doing more, they still had a good selection of 60s TV shows on, and then they were introducing a lot of the 70s shows at that time. So that's how I really learned a lot about those shows. And then between that and the Universal Monsters, it kind of opened the door, and Hitchcock films, and then just kind of down the rabbit hole after that.
I was a big devotee of old TV. I had TV Land all the time. That's what I like to watch. Before it became like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is on TV Land now, right?
Exactly. And on Nick at Night, it's Seinfeld, Friends, and you know, things like that. It's like, okay.
Where do I watch Andy Griffith's show? Where do I watch where do I watch Sanford and Son?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Mary Tyler Moore Show, I Love Lucy, Laverne and Shirley, you know, so many amazing. And then, you know, even like, as I was saying, like the 50 shows and stuff. So they you know, they used to show like the Donna Reed Show and Mr. Ed. And
Donna Reed's big here. I'm from Iowa. She's from Iowa. So
oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you go to the hometown where she grew up in, which is a very small town, the McDonald's there has a giant mural of her and all of her movies in it.
Wow.
And their town celebration is Donna Reed Days. And they love her. She's the biggest hit.
Wow. Nowadays, I'm sure where I am, people be like, who's that? Donna Reed? Never heard of her.
Oh, yeah. Well, it'd be like she's in It's a Wonderful Life. But, yeah, I'm a big old TV fan. I really liked, and I recently just bought the Blu-ray I liked the old Battlestar Galactica show a lot.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And I loved the Incredible Hulk show.
Yes.
And because back in the day, we were used to be kind of starved for superhero content. In like 2006, 7. Like they had the movies, but it wasn't like now where it's like, I guess I'll get to that Disney Plus TV show eventually, right?
Or never, or
never.
Or I'll just never watch that, please.
I wouldn't watch it. Yeah, like if this was like 2006, I'd be watching Miss Marvel in like 5 seconds.
Same.
Like, oh, it's a Marvel thing. I got to check that out.
Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, I'd be glued to the TV watching.
Moon Knight. Yeah, Moon Knight. I'm a big Moon Knight fan. I got like 3 episodes and I didn't finish it.
Yeah, I didn't even bother because it was like, this is going to be terrible.
It was bad. It was just, It was weak. But yeah, I love old shows. I've never been huge into old TV movies, except I've watched the John Travolta Boy in the Plastic Bubble movie or the I'm Dying of Germs movie.
Okay.
Have you ever seen that one?
I have not.
Okay. You know what it is?
I've heard of that, but not.
Yeah, John Travolta is allergic to everything, and he'll die if he gets germs or whatever.
Okay.
And he goes to like 4th of July celebration on a beach, and he's sitting in a plastic box.
Okay, yeah, I definitely need to watch those.
Yeah, it's tough, but like, yeah, I'm not super familiar with TV movies, so I have a hard time, I guess, comparing Kolchak. Like, is this above average? Is it? I mean, I think like Salem's Lot though is a television film, and I think that's a spectacular movie.
That's like an amazing movie. But I would say in terms of like your average ABC movie of the week or whatever network movie of the week, and ABC I think was one of the big pioneers of this. I would say it's pretty much above average. I've watched I'm not no expert by any means. It's still something I'm still getting introduced to and dabbling in. And the Kino Lorber company putting out these Blu-ray releases has been like instrumental in getting me into these. And you find movies I had never heard of, and they feature actors and actresses that like you buy them solely on them. So I think some of the ones I referenced to you when we were figuring out like which ones we're going to talk about. There's a movie called The Victim, which stars Elizabeth Montgomery from Bewitched.
Oh yeah, really?
And it's a horror movie where she's like alone in a house being stalked by someone. And it's not very good, but I mean, you watch it just because she's in it. You want to see something else with her in it, and yeah, it's passable. It's fine. But Kolchak is like, leaps and bounds. If you want to talk about cheap production values, I mean, that The Victim, go see that one.
Oh yeah.
There's Scream Pretty Peggy with Betty Davis, also a
Really?
TV movie, yeah, from the 70s. The Screaming Woman with Olivia de Havilland, where yes, she does scream like for the entire movie. But
With Olivia de Havilland. Wow. From all the old Errol Flynn movies.
yes, yep.
And this would have been in the 60s?
No, this
70s?
was the 70s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting because trying to think. Oh, I've seen Somebody's Watching Me, the John Carpenter one,
Okay. Yeah.
which is good atmosphere. I got that. I think Scream Shout Factory put it out on Blu-ray, and that was good. So I mean, I guess there was sort of a flourishing landscape of television movies, and
Oh,
I
and
guess
one of the best is the and this is something I also kind of wanted to talk to you. Are you familiar with Night Gallery? Rod Serling's Night Gallery?
no.
Oh man, I think you would definitely like that. So the
I
pilot
know.
is
I know.
a TV movie. The
Okay.
pilot is a made for TV movie, and it's probably one of the best. And one of the segments is has Joan Crawford in a segment called Eyes, where she's a blind woman, and she's going to pay someone for their eyes so she can have an eye transplant. And of course,
Really?
I won't spoil it, but it's an excellent film. Directed by Steven Spielberg. That segment.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I know. Okay, I know what you're talking about because he directed that, and he directed the pilot episode of Columbo.
Oh, did he?
And,
I did not realize
He
that.
did. Yeah, the pilot episode of Columbo was, I think, his maybe after the Eyes, because he
Okay.
talks about Eyes extensively, or it's talked about in his biography a lot.
Yeah.
How he. Okay, I'll have to check that one out. And then obviously Richard Matheson wrote Duel.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So there's a lot of which is a
there,
TV
yeah.
movie.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess there was a lot going on with TV movies, and it does force you to work. You don't have much time because obviously you're on a television schedule and budget. Let's go. And I think it forces you to have really high concept ideas that are more interesting as ideas than they are like spectacle.
Yes, absolutely.
And the Twilight Zone I've always been a fan of. Night Gallery is like basically a reboot of the Twilight Zone of some kind. They didn't.
It's very different actually. And I actually have a review written for the Night Gallery pilot that I have yet to film. But part of the thing is I think the show gets unfairly compared to Twilight Zone. And I did so first when I started watching the show. I remember I got the first season DVD, I think when I was in high school or so. And I watched it and I was like, oh, this is okay, but it's not as good as the Twilight Zone. It's just not there. And that's what I was expecting. I was just expecting more of the Twilight Zone. And then I never watched it again until I got the new release, and I watched it and I was like, wow, the show is amazing, not because it's the Twilight Zone, because it's so different. And yeah, there's a lot of misses along the way, and some of the stories don't quite make it all the way, but there's a lot of really interesting things going on in this show. And it's much more a darker horror and much more macabre than Twilight Zone. It's like there's barely any sci-fi in Night Gallery. Like Twilight Zone is like mostly sci-fi. You're going to see aliens and robots and things like that. There's none of that in Night Gallery. It's all straight up horror. And there's some really, really good ones in there too.
Okay, I will definitely have to check it out and put it on.
Yeah, you should check it out.
What do you think draws you to old television?
I think it's just there's something so just like kind of pure about it. It's simple. It's without baggage. You can just, especially old TV, you can watch an episode of any show anytime and you can feel like you get a complete story and a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you know the characters and you know what's going on. You don't have to watch every episode that came before. You don't need to watch the next episode. You can just, enjoy it as it is. And the movies, it's the same kind of concept. And I also appreciate older movies because they had to work with what they were given, which is very little. And they made good quality products with very little. Now movies are made with, $200 million budgets and there's no story there. There's nothing there. And it's just an empty shell of a movie. They realized they had like no money to make it. So they were like, let's at least make the story good. Let's have good acting. Let's have a good, theme, and we'll work around it,
I 100%. I think the quality's good, but I think to say that old movies were better, they suck now is not a great critique, but I think I can't deny in myself that I am a guy that I wish I could live in the 70s. Like I would love to go back to the 70s. Like, I think they had, or the 60s. I really love the aesthetic. Yeah, it seems simpler back then, I suppose. But yeah, I love the aesthetic of older movies. I like to surround myself with sort of old things. And the other thing
Same.
too, I am a filmmaker, a low budget filmmaker myself. And when I watch old movies, like especially like old Brian De Palma movies or John Carpenter movies, like I look at it and you can see the seams, right? But
Yes.
that I'm like, okay, now I know how they did that. I know what they're going for. I can try that too. Like I love that. Like you don't need to do a split focus diopter shot anymore the way that Brian De Palma used to do it, right? Where you would want to have two people in focus at once, so you'd put on that split focus lens, and there'd be like a big blurry piece in the middle, and you'd have to disguise it with like a wall or something. But you can always tell when it's happening, and it's very deliberate. Now you don't have to do that. You just take those two clips and like merge them together on the computer, and you don't need to worry about that kind of stuff anymore. But I like seeing that stuff because it reminds me that it was made, especially when we talk about old Tom Savini and Dick Smith special effects.
Yep.
You can do anything now. Like when I heard that they CGI'd the remake of The Thing, I was like, well, what is the point of even,
Yes.
right?
It's much more satisfying when you watch a movie and you see something and you go, wow, they actually made that and it looks real. It looks really good. So yes, Tom Savini is a great example of those special effects, which is it's an entirely lost art. There will be no one once he's gone and people who studied under him are gone. There will be no one around that knows how to do practical special effects. It'll all be done in the computer, and they look cheap. They don't look real.
They're getting worse.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is. We're supposed to have such great technology now, and things is just because people are doing it cheaper and they don't care, and they know people will be satisfied with less effective imagery. I don't know, but and the other thing you said, which was I completely agree with, is sometimes the illusion of things looking fake and artificial is sometimes beneficial, and I like that. I enjoy that sometimes. So like if you watch an older movie from let's say the 40s, and you can clearly tell they have a matte background drop, as the setting. Clearly, they're on a soundstage, in some studio, and it's supposed to be in an outside location, and it looks fake. It doesn't make it. It doesn't really take you out of the movie. It just creates a different kind of sensation, a different type of feeling, and you can appreciate the artistry that went into creating that in the first place. I don't think that things need to be mutually exclusive. That in order to be realistic or whatever, or to be real, things need to be as hyper realistic as possible.
I think society as a whole has kind of been slowly draining itself of color. It's bizarre to me. I look back at I'm moving to somewhere else, and my girlfriend and I are looking through like books, of like oh hey, what should we design it like? We're looking through old mid-century modern, and we're like, wow, everyone had like color in their home. And every place we go look is just gray. Oh, we repainted this gray. It's McDonald's gray. I don't understand it. They just want to tear everything down and build, brutalist cement architecture, and everything's gray and fiberglass, and it's terrible.
I don't get it, and it's like everything looks like you're at the the airport or whatever. Even hospitals look like this now. There's something just cold and sterile and just.
I think the best example is airplanes. You look at photos of airplanes, people on airplanes back in the 60s, you're like, what happened? We took a wrong turn somewhere because now it sucks.
It's just the general trend of architectural design and kind of advertising aesthetics. Everything is just, we've embraced this minimalist design strategy. I don't know if it started or it became popularized by maybe Apple and things like that, where you go into the Apple store and it's just a barren white room. And I realize I'm sitting in a pretty white, bright room, but
you look like you're at the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey in that office.
I kind of do, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool, though.
I
It's cool.
a
I get
little
it.
bit more in here, but
All right, back on topic of Kolchak. Is there anything that you wanted to? And I kind of wanted to talk to you about horror movies in general, but I don't want you to have to miss anything in your notes.
Yeah, no. So I actually wanted to talk about a couple of cast members that are in mainly The Night Stalker, which has a much more interesting cast than Night Stalker. So
Yeah.
I mean, I still tip my whatever. I would still put Night Stalker as my preferred movie, but Night Strangler has a more interesting cast. And I don't know if you noticed some of these people, but so Margaret Hamilton is the professor in Night Strangler. She plays
Yep.
Professor Crabwell, and of course, she was the Wicked Witch of the West in Wizard of Oz.
Oh, really?
Yes, so that was her.
That was a cool
In
scene in her office.
what's that?
That's a cool scene in her office when she explains like the diet of these old crazy
Exactly.
guys or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, she's great in this, and I think she was experiencing like a bit of a resurgence in her career at that time. Like she had been appearing in like other like TV shows and movies. I think she played like Morticia Adams' mother in The Addams Family and some other stuff like that. So there's her. We kind of talked about John Carradine a little bit, but he plays the newspaper owner, and
David
he's
Carradine's brother?
father.
Father. Okay.
Father, yeah, and he was in a lot of the old classic Universal monster films back in the 40s. So he played Dracula actually a couple times in, I believe, House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, in those two. And he also did, he played not quite Dracula, because even though the movie's called Billy the Kid versus Dracula, he's not Dracula. But that's a horrible movie, but it's still kind of interesting.
Billy the Kid versus Dracula.
Yeah,
Okay.
Billy the Kid versus Dracula, yeah.
All right.
So there's him. Al Lewis plays the wino in the Underground. That's Grandpa Munster from the Munsters.
Okay. Sure.
Yep. And then one that I did not realize when I first saw him, but I when I looked him up, I was like, oh, that's who that is. So Wally Cox plays the kind of meekish researcher, librarian guy.
Yes.
And I'm not familiar with this show. He was the star of this show called Mr. Peepers in the 1950s. But I recognized it when his voice, because he played the cartoon Underdog. He was the voice of Underdog in the cartoon series.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Like, there's no need to fear. Underdog is here.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
in Night Stalker, I know the sheriff of town was on Bonanza all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the guy that is like always losing at the gambling table.
Oh,
That guy
yeah.
is in everything. He's in like the Maltese Falcon. He's in like he's always like the guy that gets like he's always just like an underdog who gets, betrayed or killed, or he's like a squealer all the time.
Yeah.
That guy is in like everything. I'm trying to figure out. I bet he's been in like 100 movies.
Yeah, I don't have the cast for that movie in front of me, but those were the ones. And then one other weird thing that I noticed is that the love interest in The Night Strangler is a young lady named Joanne Flug, and she was the voice of the Invisible Woman in the 1960s Fantastic Four cartoon.
Oh, which is great.
Yeah, have you seen that one?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I love that. They used to play that all the time back on Boomerang back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one of the best adaptations of Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and I'm a big Hanna-Barbera guy.
Nice.
Especially like I have Johnny Quest and Space Ghost on Blu-ray, which are both
Excellent.
just great. And I love all that kind of stuff where they were trying to lean into that comic book aesthetic. Rather than Yogi Berra, they were like, let's make something for like a 13-year-old kid, right? I think those are really cool. I think Johnny Quest is an exceptionally cool series.
Way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
So ahead of its time. And unfortunately, like if you've never seen it, there's an amazing YouTube documentary series about the entire history of Johnny Quest.
I'm pretty sure I've watched it. Yeah.
Okay. It's like a 13-part like video series, and this guy was
terrific.
like, it's spectacular. And I learned so much from that I didn't know about the guy that basically created it. Because Hanna-Barbera, I mean, as much as I love them, they're a little bit on the taking credit side where they didn't really do certain things. Like, yes, they were the head of the business and they did some creative stuff, but like they kind of like to take credit for other people's work sometimes. And so there's a guy named Doug Wildey who really pioneered the concept of Johnny Quest. And he probably worked with Joe Barbera on it a lot. And
but he came up with all the designs.
Exactly, yeah.
And if anything, they were like, well, we need to have a little dog in there.
Yeah.
That's always barking with the same noise, which I think I'm not a big Bandit fan.
It's okay. I mean, I don't. He helps. I mean, I feel like it could be way worse. I mean,
well, yeah, because I watched that video because that guy beat me to the punch because I was like, well, I'm going to do the Johnny Quest documentary, and he did it before me and did it.
Yeah, you'll never top that one. I mean, I would never top that. I mean,
it was terrific. Yeah, and that's a great show. Space Ghost, I watched it again, and it's not as good. It's it's sort of. I guess
the difference is that Johnny Quest technically, I mean, was made for prime time. It was made for, like, I guess all ages or more for older skewing audiences.
Yeah.
Space Ghost and the others were Saturday morning fare for kids. And it
Yeah.
doesn't, preclude them from being good. It's just that they're skewed more younger.
Johnny Quest, yeah, it has its moments where it is sort of a kiddie show, but for the most part, I mean, there's like spectacular. The illustrations are spectacular. The character designs are amazing. And then you have great things like, oh, on this episode, we'll meet someone from Race Bannon's past, like that woman who's like his old girlfriend who's in it for like 3 episodes.
Jezebel Jade.
Yeah, she pops up. Like that stuff is great. Where it feels like there's a little bit of progression in the story sometimes.
And in what kids show would they have the plot point be where she can tell that the double of Race Bannon is not Race Bannon because he doesn't kiss like Race Bannon?
Right.
In what kids show are they going to do that, right?
Yeah, Race Bannon is like, he's such a cool character.
And as much as I would love for a Johnny Quest movie to be made, I also don't want them to make a movie.
No.
Certainly not now. Okay. Maybe
you don't want to see The Rock as Race Bannon?
When things have changed, but like not right now, please.
We know what we'd get. We'd get The Rock as Race Bannon.
Yes.
It would be an origin story about how they became. You know what I mean? It would be terrible. They would ruin it.
They would ruin it. They ruin everything now.
Yeah, they do. But
I hate to say that, but
no, it's true. It's true. Everything is like being systematically ruined, which is why I've really kind of checked out of. There's very few new things I get excited about, unless it's like I saw David Cronenberg's new movie because I'm going to see what Cronenberg is up to. Right?
Was it
Crimes
good?
of the Future? Yeah, it was good. It's good if you really like his stuff. If you don't,
I mean, I'm not crazy about it, but I mean, there's certainly movies that how can you deny that they're excellent? I mean,
this kind of goes back to the Christopher Nolan point where it's like, I'll be interested to see any Christopher Nolan film movie because he's a guy who is making the movies he wants to make. And even if I don't like it, it's nice to see a voice, that's even if it's weird and totally off the wall. Well, hey, that's I know for a fact that that's that guy making this and not a committee. It's not, the Marvel committee. It's, it's
yes.
not, it's and that's the same with Cronenberg. This new movie is like, I would not recommend it to anybody unless they liked Naked Lunch or they liked, The Brood or, stuff like that. Right.
Okay.
Whereas I think like A History of Violence and like Eastern Promises are like accessible to regular people. But yeah, the new Cronenberg movie is about a future in which people like do, like hardcore invasive surgery on themselves as like art performance. It's very weird. It's cool though. It's good. It's nice. It's good if you into his stuff and get what he's like. Have you seen Existenz?
No.
Okay. It's kind of like, yeah. I don't know if you're that familiar with his stuff. Videodrome.
I'm familiar with the old stuff.
Yeah.
Not so much the last maybe 10 years or so. I have not seen many of his.
Yeah, I stuck with him.
80s films and
Crash is great. But yeah, it's and not that I enjoy weird stuff for weird's sake, but the guy he's an interesting.
Sometimes though, you do need a strong producer to kind of say like, "Hey, wait a second, like this doesn't make any sense. Like, maybe change this a little bit, maybe just dial it back just a little bit." Everything congeals, and I feel like with Nolan that no one's telling him no. Like, maybe just dial it back a little bit that we can figure out the plot.
Hey, brother, this movie doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah.
I'm telling you, in that movie Tenet, at the very end, when the military guy is explaining their plan, he's like, here's what we're going to do. One of you guys is going to fight backwards in this time. And then I was like, what is happening? What are they trying to do?
Anytime you have to have a character come and explain the plot, you've already lost.
Dude,
so.
maybe I'm dumb, but like, I was thinking, I don't know what that was about. I don't know why they were doing that.
No, and that was part of my review, which was definitely one of the more ones that I kind of went off on. But
caustic.
Yeah, I'd say so. But it really infuriated me because there's a vocal group of people that are like, we'll just defend him to no end, and even if he makes an inferior product that does not make any sense, they'll say, well, it's because maybe you're not smart enough that you didn't understand this. And it's like, well, not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm a pretty smart guy. And
I've seen a lot of movies.
Making sense. Yeah, I've seen enough movies, and also just in general, like I'm not an idiot. I think I can see through this maybe a little bit. You didn't think it through. Maybe the concept is there, but you didn't see it through to the end.
No, I think that's probably right. It's just not like Inception was. I thought it made sense. Like, you know, what
Yes,
I
I
mean,
think that one they actually put the effort into it, and it actually follows through to it actually follows through. It actually makes they come up with enough logistical reasons for why things are the way they are. You need to have rules, you need to have boundaries, and you need to set them within a world where yes, we're living in a world that makes no sense, but at the same time there are certain rules that you follow, and they exist within the confines of those boundaries.
and I think with Inception, I think Nolan mentioned this in an interview. Like Inception's a heist movie, and like
Mhm.
one of the big draws of a heist movie is, um, uh, oh god, I can't make exposition. Exposition
Uh,
is like why you know like Ocean's 11. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's the plan.
yeah,
Like they're
the
telling you
planning.
everything, and that's the interesting part. Like that's one of the
Yeah.
only genres of films where that is the case, right? And you have an Inception, a world.
Crazy stuff. Yeah, then you can do all the crazy stuff inside the dreams or whatever, you know.
Yeah, and you have a world where people understand what this incepting is, and so they can explain it to another character. Whereas, if I'm not wrong, in Tenet, what's going on is like a mystery, and they don't know what it is, so it's like even more confusing.
People do know what it is, and others don't, and they explain it and they explain it again, and I don't know, it contradicts itself. I honestly don't even remember at this point.
I
I
don't.
watched it just one time, and I was like, I'm never watching this again. I'm not watching it again to try and understand it. I don't have enough. Life is too short, you know.
And you don't like Robert Pattinson, who I think is awesome, but you know, whatever. He's
I,
literally me, bro.
I don't know. I just maybe I'm biased because of Twilight. I don't know. I just don't.
I actually watched all the Twilight films like a year and a half ago.
Oh, really? I think I saw the first three when they came out in the movies, and that was it.
I had never seen them, but I was like in high school, and I was like, "That's stupid. Twilight's dumb," and it is dumb. It is stupid, but like they're not terrible. I get the appeal, you know.
They're not as bad as they necessarily are portrayed, but I mean, it's definitely not my thing at all. And I don't know. I just felt like he was kind of just boring and bland in those.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, and I absolutely, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I absolutely hated him as Batman. So.
Well, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole either, but I really thought I think Ben Affleck maybe is the best.
I agree.
I thought
terms
he
of
was
Marvel.
great. He's the best actor. He's looked the best in the suit of any actor.
Yes.
He looks like he walked out of the comic book with that suit. He's got a big enough jaw and face to fill out that costume, right?
I do appreciate a physically imposing Batman who, like, he would come through doorways and he would barely fit through the door because he's so
Yeah.
freaking massive. And it's like that's a scary Batman. And he's like when he's hiding in the corner of the room, like in the ceiling or whatever, like it's an intimidating figure, not some scrawny little guy, you know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess you'll disagree with me, but I liked Pattinson's performance, and I liked his willingness to not really be out of the costume very much. And when he is, he's sort of this morose millennial, like recluse,
Yeah.
which I like.
I don't
I
know.
like that.
See, that's also the thing is I don't know if I should blame him or not. That's the way the character is written, and that's the way he's told to do it. And does he do it well? Yeah, sure. He's doing
That
version of a character who is called Batman. You know, he's acting it well, but it's just not.
not what you
It's not my
wanted.
thing.
Yeah,
Not my
no,
thing.
I totally get it. But I did not like any of the Ben Affleck Batman movies, but I definitely thought he was good in them.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about them anymore. I just.
I thought
I
like,
remember,
go ahead.
yeah, I remember when Batman v Superman came out, and I was like, what just happened? And then I was like, well, if that's what we're gonna get,
Yeah,
okay, sure.
That
Let's
was
just
a-
roll.
that was a bizarre movie. I just inexplicable choices being made all the time. Like it was a strange. I didn't like it.
And that's another one where is there no one saying on set, hey, this doesn't make any sense. Hey, this script is garbage. What are we doing?
Yeah,
Why are the characters acting this way? Why is our resolution of the movie this? Why does Lex Luthor act like a totally different character who we've never seen before?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
It was rough. And I have to say, I think Man of Steel. That is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I hated that movie so
agree.
much. I hated it because I'm just waiting for my Christopher Reeve Superman. That's what I want.
Yeah.
You know?
So, are you a fan of Superman Returns?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yes.
I think it kind of is
Thank
anticlimactic
you.
and falls apart towards the end, and I didn't
Well,
appreciate it as a kid, but I watched it again, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I was like, this is actually a class act. This is kind of a fun movie. This is a good, you know,
I will defend that movie to the bitter end. I
yeah.
yes, I think the ending is a little weak with the Kryptonite Island or whatever
Hmm.
it was, but I mean that is just such a better movie than Man of Steel. And Man of Steel also is also part of that. I don't know if watching it in 3D at the time
Oh,
made it worse.
that would, yeah,
Just it was at that time that was like the peak of bad 3D. Man of
yeah,
Steel and Pacific Rim for me, where I was like, I just want to get out of here.
yeah.
I just turn this off. Let me out. Let me just walk out. Like this
I
is just
hate,
garbage.
yeah, I hated that. And I remember seeing the Avengers opening night, and I was so hyped for that. I couldn't even believe it. And I was with my track team, and we had gotten done with our track meet at like 11 o'clock, and we were like, let's go see Avengers. It comes out in an hour, right? So we all went there to see it. It was awesome, except for the fact that the guy at the theater, they projected the 3D print, but it wasn't a 3D showing, so no one had 3D glasses.
No,
And it was just like
no,
blurred. I was like,
no. Come on, you can't watch that.
I went and complained, and they were just like, oh, sorry, I gave you a refund if you want.
Wow.
Like, okay.
Yeah,
But
I avoided 3D after that.
I hated it. I'm not even a big Avatar guy. I didn't really. I wasn't
Oh no,
necessarily.
Avatar, no,
Yeah, I wasn't blown away by that at all. I don't.
no.
I,
Never understood the appeal.
I mean, apparently there was some. I mean, that movie had some of the best marketing of all time, just to get people hyped up that it was going to be so great. To where I think people wanted to believe it was great. And
Yes, and that's part of you actually absolutely hit it on the head there. People get whipped up into a frenzy and that they feel like they're being left out if they don't agree with the
mhm.
consensus opinion on certain things. And that's part of the reason that I started doing the channel in the first place is like sometimes my opinion is different and it maybe it's the wrong opinion. I don't know. Time will tell. But like there's certain movies that I hated that everyone else loved and vice versa. And I'm just like, well, if I can defend it to the best extent that I can as to why, then I'm just going to put that out there and time will tell the story about whether or not because I feel like people's opinions have changed and Avatar is not held up with the same regard that it once was.
No, God, no. No one remembers anything about it. Like, I'm actually
Yeah.
really surprised to see how the second one will do. Um,
But like, it's like what's the point
I mean,
anymore?
but is there some kind of secret like Avatar fan base that's just not on the internet? Do you know what I mean? That will like come out for this thing. I mean, I don't.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But yeah, I can't think of anything else I'm getting really excited about. I'm not really excited for the next Marvel thing.
No. And it's actually quite sad that I feel that way about Marvel.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to be so pumped up
Oh
for the
God.
next movie, the next superhero movie. Be like, whatever, even if it's garbage, still go see it. There's still going to be something interesting in it. Now I just like I don't want to see it.
Don't care.
Don't care. I just don't care. The apathy is there, and it's actually quite disturbing. But the movie that I was most excited for and was a huge disappointment, and I have to film the review is Halloween Ends.
Oh really?
Oh my god!
You didn't like it? I
Oh
just watched
my
Red Letter
god.
Media's review of it, and they said that it was pretty good. So I'll have to.
It was pretty good.
They loved it. They loved it.
Oh my god! I don't know what they're usually pretty on the nose
Mm-hmm.
about these things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say, it is not a poorly made movie. It
Sure.
is not a. It is a well done production.
Yeah.
Like everything is very deliberate about what they do and why they do it, but it's inexplicable and it is wholly unsatisfying a conclusion. That
Okay.
is the main problem. Now, if I rewatch this movie in like 5 years or whatever, I may have a totally different opinion because I'm removed from like the here and now. But as the conclusion to the trilogy, and as the final movie likely that Jamie Lee Curtis will ever do for Halloween,
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the way to end it at all.
Okay. I'll probably end up checking it out. I like the Halloween. I love the first one, and
Yeah. Well, you talking about the remake or
I'm talking about John Carpenter. The
Oh yeah,
original.
yeah. Of course. That's like
I love
as I
that
said
movie.
in my ranking, that's the gold standard. There's no comparison.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I even like the second one. I even like Halloween 2.
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Halloween
I mean,
fine.
it's not as good, obviously. Like I think the big problem with Halloween 2 is just how long the span in between when they made it. And so Jamie Lee's got a horrible wig on and she's hardly in the movie because she's off to bigger and better things.
She's like catatonic
and I think that Halloween 2 like falls prey to like like all these other movies are taking what should be our money, by making Friday the 13th and stuff. So we need to just copy them. They copied us. Now we're just going to copy them. And we'll do
because it's much more gore.
Hot nurses get killed. Yeah, it's just that's like the whole thing. And Michael Myers like burning people alive in like hot water and just dumb stuff that he never do. But nevertheless, I
much
like
more gruesome kills, much less focus on story. I mean, there is no story. It's just I'm gonna kill you. You're in the hospital, and I'm gonna get there, and that's it.
That's totally. But I do like the thing I loved about it when I first saw it. It was probably one of the first like slasher movies I ever saw. I love that it took up right after Halloween 1. I think that's a cool thing, and that's actually something interesting that I noticed when I just rewatched Bride of Frankenstein. Is that's very much the same way, which I was surprised. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's interesting. They just kind of like they're like, oh wait a minute, it didn't end. It kept going, and
exactly. That's Quiet Place 2 does that as well.
Oh really? I think that's a fun way to do a sequel. I don't necessarily think it worked great for like Star Wars, like The Last Jedi, but
I don't even want to get started on that.
Yeah, but I think it worked for Halloween, and
now, did you see the new ones? Did you see Halloween 2018?
I only saw Halloween 2018, and I remember thinking it was perfectly fine, and that it was. We went and saw it in the theater, and it was scary, and we had fun, and oh, it was my cat. We had fun, and get out of here. And it didn't ruin it. There was no dumb revelation that Michael Myers was actually some kind of like druid cult guy or whatever. Like I think it was in 5 or 6, right?
Yes.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I liked the iconography of it. That they got the mask right. It wasn't needlessly complicated like the Rob Zombie one where we need to give the origin backstory of Michael Myers or whatever. But I didn't like it enough that I needed to go see the Halloween Kills, and I heard that was so bad that I kind of avoided it.
I loved Halloween Kills.
Oh, really?
I thought it was excellent. It was just a really good Halloween movie. Yeah, there's some stupid things in it, and I think people get caught up in the like kind of silliness of the townspeople. The townspeople get like whipped up into a frenzy, and they're chanting like "Evil dies tonight."
Yeah.
People make fun of that, and it's a little stupid, but at the same time, there are some amazing. Michael's kills in that movie are pretty spectacular. I mean, the gore, the storyline is good. The characters, it follows through to where the first one left off. And that's what I don't like about this new one, is that Michael Myers is barely in it. Right. He is not focal. Him and Laurie are not the focus of the movie, and that's a huge mistake. You do not introduce a new character in the third film that hijacks the movie and takes it to no logical conclusion. It's a non sequitur. It's a storyline that goes nowhere. And then at the end they're like, oh yeah, oops, we also have to have the final showdown, and here it is. That's good. There's good climax.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I had heard.
It's almost like a romance movie for most of it, and nothing happens. And there's like a very low body count.
Would it have been better as a second one?
What's that?
Would it have been better if it was like the second film?
It actually would have been better if this was the fourth movie.
Okay.
Like if they had done a third movie that was like, this movie should have been like 100% just climax, Michael versus Laurie, setting that up, and then like it ends, and then Laurie's done. We send her away, and then we do a fourth movie where they do this weird thing where I don't know. It's almost like they don't follow through to the like what they're actually trying to do. And I'm sorry, I keep saying follow through. Like I probably said it like 100 times, but there's this scene where this new guy Corey becomes like the new killer.
Yeah, and
he looks at Michael Myers they look eye to eye. They make eye contact, and like his evil is transferred to him.
Didn't that happen in Halloween?
Yeah, I don't know. And
the little girl in Halloween 5 or whatever.
Yeah, because that was his niece, right? Yeah.
But we're done.
That was like saying it was genetic. That was like saying like that his evil is genetic or something like that.
We did away with the genetic thing in these new movies, right? Laurie is not her brother, correct?
You know what? I can't even. No, you know what? They're
Because in
I don't
Halloween
think they are,
2.
because that was introduced in 2. That was introduced in 2, and 2 is not part of the continuity.
Okay. All right.
So I believe that's correct, that they're not related.
Okay.
But basically, like, by looking at this guy Corey, he like transfers the evil to him, and he becomes like a psycho killer. And this, like, he's predisposed because he accidentally killed some child in the beginning of the movie. But like the whole point is that that was an accident, and that he's not a bad guy. But now he is a bad guy because he killed the child. It's like it doesn't add up.
I'll have to check it out because I've heard
You have to watch it and just be like,
the thing.
do you have Peacock? Do you have Peacock, the app?
No, maybe I have no. Who knows? I have no idea.
Because it's on there.
Okay.
It's on there for free. Like,
for free? I might go see it in the theater if I'm going to see it. But
okay. I mean, if you have Comcast, they provide it Peacock, so that's. I mean,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't have regular TV. I just have streaming stuff.
Okay, yeah, I'm still kind of old fashioned. I still have Comcast.
You get your
cable.
rotary phone going?
Yeah, dial-up
Okay.
modem.
I was going to ask, do you like Halloween? Do you like any other 80s slasher movies?
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I love all the major franchises. So Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and then obviously, I mean, I see you have the Escape from New York poster behind you.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
yeah, and then I know that's not a slasher movie, but John Carpenter is definitely one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. So
What do you think is what would be a slasher movie that is like a hidden gem that you like that you would say check out? I just watched Road Games recently. Did you ever see Road Games?
I have not.
Stacy Keach. It was one of like the 4 horror movies that Jamie Lee Curtis did after Halloween. Like there was Prom Night, and there was Halloween 2, and what's Terror Train?
Terror Train.
Which is I did a review of a long time ago.
Oh, you know what? Have you seen The Funhouse?
No, I that's a George Romero movie, right?
Is it? I don't know.
Okay, maybe it's not, but yeah, I know what you're talking
That
about.
one and Prison is also. I think that's an underrated. Believe Viggo Mortensen is in that one.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I just watched the Christopher Walken Prophecy movie. Have you ever seen that? And Viggo Mortensen was in that playing the devil.
No, I have not seen that one.
I wouldn't recommend it. It was written by the same guy that did Highlander. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, Prison is it's an interesting slasher movie from '87. It's with Viggo Mortensen.
Prison.
And
Okay.
it's like a slasher movie set in a prison. So that one's kind of underrated. These are
Sounds
ones like I
cool.
found like whenever Scream Factory was doing, like it was during the early times when they were putting out stuff, and I was just buying everything.
I was totally with you because they were putting all these out in like great new editions, and I saw like The Burning, which is
yeah,
The Burning is great. That one's a really interesting one because it has so many. The cast is Jason Alexander is in it, Holly Hunter is in it, like the guy that was the head dude in Fast Times is in it. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It's that's a really quality, fun one with really sort of exciting and scary kills in it, but also like the characters are you actually really do feel for the characters in that movie. They're not just like everyone in Friday the 13th is like horrible and you don't care when they die, right?
Yes.
But this one, you actually have like a romance, like the 2 older camp counselors you like, and you want them to live, and the little kid, and it's a good quality one. The Burning, I would recommend for sure.
Okay.
Then I know you're. Go ahead.
For modern ones, actually this year, Ty West's movie X is one of the best slasher movies of the last probably 20, 30 years, I would say.
I have not been paying attention to what's going on with that because then he just dropped like a second movie on everybody, right?
Yeah, I have not seen Pearl, but I heard it's also good. But I don't think we needed that. But
X is really good. I need to see it. Yeah,
it is what the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie from this year should have been, but it was not.
I didn't see that one, man. You can't.
No. I did a review of that one. There's one good scene, which is when Leatherface gets on this party bus with a bunch of hipster millennials with freaking strobe lights and strobe neon lights, and all they do is they're all like stoned when he gets on the bus, and when he comes on, they all just whip out their cell phones and start live streaming him on Instagram, and then he just kills them all.
Wow. Okay, well I'll have to because I love the first and second Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I need to rewatch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 because I have not seen that in a long time. And when I saw it, I think I was a kid at the time. I did not understand what they were going for in that one.
No, that's when I brought a buddy of mine too, who's like, he's like a movie guy, but he kind of doesn't really, I don't think he likes anything that's too violent or anything. And like, it is fairly like towards the end, it really ramps up and gets fucking crazy, right? But like I saw it at the Alamo Draft House. Which I don't know if you have any of those near you. It's a
No.
spectacular theater chain where they show all sorts of old revival stuff, and it's like a really cool bar, and they have good food, and they did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with like corresponding courses of a meal. And so they made like
Oh,
Texas barbecue and stuff, like, and brought it out the scene where, they obviously the family cooks people and turns them into their barbecue, right? But that first movie I really love, and that movie is still very frightening, just because it's shot on like 16 millimeter film and it looks real.
yes, it does, and that looks real in a appropriate way. It doesn't. It doesn't. It looks. It's stark. It's startling. It's very eerie and just. It's great. I mean, it holds up.
Oh yeah, because it reminds you of like the Zapruder film or something. It looks
Yeah,
right.
it's like somebody actually did find this random footage. Yeah.
And the actors are so raw and weird. Especially at
Yeah.
the end dinner table scene, you're like, this is horrific.
Oh my God.
These are just like hillbillies that they pulled out of the corner store and put in a movie, and they're nuts.
Yeah, no, I mean, you feature a lot of interesting, obscure films, which is totally what I'm down for and interested in. I notice the main focus seems to be like late 70s, early 80s for the most part. You're into older stuff too, or not so much?
It's just happened to work out that way. But the next big video I'm doing is going to be all stuff from like the late 30s.
Oh, perfect.
So
Okay.
I watch a lot of older movies, but I've tended just to focus on the 70s ones. They take a long time to produce, and
And that's why I'm not. I want to. I would love to change the focus of mine to do all older stuff, but at the same time, the amount of time that goes into research and making sure that you don't say something stupid.
oh yeah,
And
You
like
will.
totally inaccurate, or just have like a Wikipedia version of the thing is. It takes time, so it's much easier for me to just do a contemporary review
Yeah.
and
No, I get it.
and just get it done and just next, and that way, when I see people in real life and they know I have a channel where they're not really interested in watching some 1970s movie review. They can say, "Oh, what'd you think about Jurassic World?" And be like, oh, "Okay, I mean, I didn't do that one, but
Yeah, right.
same concept."
See video. End of convo.
Yeah, see the video.
No,
Yeah.
I actually I don't really talk to people I know in real life. The only person that watches my videos is my brother. But like I don't like put it on my Facebook or say, "Hey, check out my channel," because I know that like regular people are going to be like, "Well, I've never seen any of this shit," right? I don't know, right? But
Precisely.
so
Yeah, no, I mean, like people that I like, some good friends, they watch all my stuff,
Uh-huh.
and I tell people at work and stuff, and like whatever, I don't care.
just as a fan, I would like to see you do more classic stuff, because you've thrown out a ton of stuff that I'd want to see. Like just
Oh, really?
oh yeah, I mean like Monster on Campus. I don't know what that. You get deep
man.
in the Universal horror films. I didn't know there was a second Creature of the Black Lagoon. So
Oh,
I saw
really?
your video.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one, and there's a third one too. Creature
Oh,
Walks
really?
Among Us. Yeah, I actually have a poster in the other room for that one too.
Okay, I have Creature of the
out.
Black Lagoon on Blu-ray. I have the original, but I had no idea that it was there were 3 movies. Okay.
Yeah, you should check out. They have the set that has all 3.
Okay.
Actually.
Okay. I'll have to
Yeah.
get that. I'll have to pick that one up. But yeah, the Universal
man.
Monster. Go ahead.
For those Universal Monsters, I have them on video, I have them on DVD, I have them on Blu-ray, and now they're coming out with the freaking 4K releases. I mean, how many times am I gonna have to quadruple dip on these movies? But
I'm gonna
like,
get you.
I have to. Like, how can I not buy the 4K collection that has? They just came out with a new one this year with like 4 other ones. I forgot which one. Phantom of the Opera, Bride, and I think Creature and Mummy. The Mummy, I think,
Okay.
are on that one.
Okay. The last big box set I bought was that Arrow Volume 1 of Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movies.
Okay, that is something I am not well versed on, like this kind of the kung fu.
Neither am
movies.
I, and I don't feel comfortable talking about it because I don't know enough.
Yes,
But
and that's the same way on a lot of things. Like I'd love to do like Giallo and stuff like that, but I don't know enough about that stuff.
Same.
Like I need to research it more.
Same. Yeah, I don't have enough. I don't have a leg to stand on because like if I were to talk about like Mario Bava or something, like I haven't seen enough Italian movies to know like I've only seen his stuff and Dario Argento's stuff and I actually just watched Tenebrae this year, which is very good.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of Argento. His like that period of like from the late 70s to the early 80s.
Some of those films are pretty rough.
Oh yeah, like have you ever seen
is he House by the Cemetery?
That's Mario
is that
Bava. I haven't seen that one.
Okay.
Is that pretty scary?
Okay. They're just weird. Like I don't get a lot of it.
Have you seen the original Suspiria?
Yes. No, that is good. That one that one there's no denying that one.
It's great. And then Inferno is good.
That has Joan Collins, right? Joan Bennett, my bad.
Oh, is one of the witches.
Bennett, who was from Dark Shadows, actually.
Oh, really?
So there's a damn connection there. Yeah.
Oh.
So Dark Shadows connection.
That's a good.
She plays like the head mistress or whatever.
I would say the craziest of Argento's movies that I've seen is Phenomenon with Jennifer Connelly. And
it's a newer movie then.
It's 85, so she's very young.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
She plays a girl that can talk to bugs. And Donald Pleasance is in it too.
Oh, nice.
He's like a scientist guy who has a monkey that's his friend. And the movie is like, it's like, oh, this is kind of scary and interesting. It's kind of like the same deal, like girls at a boarding school. There's a killer out there on the loose, right? But then also there's this added element of Jennifer Connelly can talk to bugs, right? Which is interesting. Mm-hmm. And then like, it's like frightening. It's like that kind of same kind of giallo, like chasing the woman and then stabbing her, right? All right, I get it, right? It's kind of like, Blood and Black Lace or some of those early Mario Bava ones. But like, the movie just turns on a dime in the third act and becomes like the most violent, insane thing you've ever seen. Like, it's nuts. So I don't want to spoil too much about it, but like, there's just all of a sudden just left turn, horrific like violence and insanity, and but it's spectacular, and it's one of them that was like almost so gross. I was like, oh. Like there's a part where Jennifer Connelly gets pushed into a pool that is full of the decomposing remains of all of the victims, and it is like, oh my god. But no, for the most part, I really like Argento stuff. He's a fun director. But yeah, I know.
It's definitely one of those things that like it's on my radar. It's on my list. But like, there's so many. And that's the beauty of this is like there's so many old movies that to explore, and you'll never run out of stuff.
While it's true you might not ever run out of old movies to watch, this is the end of the video version of this interview. I spoke with Ryan Cinecrisis longer, about 2.5 hours, and you can, of course, per usual, find that audio version of this interview on my podcast platform, george-filmjournal.com. Apologies that I don't have a fancy studio end slate for this video. I have to just make do considering I'm traveling. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed talking with Ryan. He's got a great channel and you guys should go follow him there. Until next time, thanks for watching.